Listen carefully. The moment you decide to never beg, never chase, and never explain yourself again, a different version of you is born. One that the world can't predict, can't manipulate, and can't break. Weak men plead, strong men choose, kings move in silence and let their results speak. This is the mindset Machiavelli admired, the kind of man who does not ask for approval because he already knows his value. You are stepping into that version now. From this moment, you pull your energy inward. You stop running after people who don't deserve your presence. You stop explaining your worth to those too blind to see it. You stop being available to every distraction that wants a piece of your focus. Power begins with subtraction. Every time you don't react, you grow stronger. Every time you don't chase, you gain respect. Every time you stay silent, you stay unpredictable. This is the mind the world fears, the mind you are about to build. Say it in the comments so it becomes real. My silence is power, and remember this: a disciplined mind becomes an untouchable life. Comment, I rise in silence, if you feel the shift beginning. Number 2, the power retreat. Strength is forged the moment you realize that chasing people, validation, or explanations is a silent confession of weakness. Machiavelli understood this truth deeply. The man who controls his reactions controls the battlefield. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop handing out access to your inner world. When you stop chasing, you force others to step toward you, because in the game of power, the one who waits holds more leverage than the one who runs. And when you stop begging, you declare to the universe that you are no longer available for disrespect, delay, or dishonesty. This is where your transformation begins, not in noise, not in revenge, but in cold, internal authority. Every time you choose silence, you train your mind to act instead of react, to observe instead of explode, to calculate instead of crumble. People will feel the shift even before you say a word, because energy always reveals truth long before language does. Some will respect you, some will fear you, and some will try to pull you back into your old patterns because your growth threatens their comfort. But understand this: the moment you stop chasing anything external, you begin attracting everything internal. Clarity, discipline, certainty, and a level of peace that no chaos can steal. You become the person who no longer reacts to provocation, no longer entertains disrespect, and no longer wastes emotional energy on situations that are beneath your purpose, because you finally understand that composure is a currency far more valuable than anger. A man who stops chasing immediately changes the power dynamic. He signals that his attention is earned through respect, not demanded through desperation, and this alone forces others to reevaluate how they approach him. This is the foundation of becoming unbreakable, building a mind that does not collapse under pressure, does not fold under judgment, and does not shatter when the world tests your patience or your pride. You rise above noise, above drama, above anything that tries to pull you back into emotional slavery, because you were not designed to kneel, you were designed to conquer. Stay sharp always. Comment, I choose power over reaction. Number 3, the art of silent dominance. There comes a moment in every man's evolution when he finally understands that silence is not weakness. It is strategy, precision, and psychological dominance. The loudest one in the room is rarely the strongest. The strongest is the one who can watch everything, feel everything, and react to nothing unless it benefits his long-term position. Machiavelli taught that a powerful mind must remain unreadable, because once people can predict you, they can control you, break you, or manipulate your emotions at their convenience. But when your silence becomes your shield, no one knows what you think, what you feel, or what you're planning next. And that uncertainty is where your power multiplies. People fear what they can't define, they respect what they can't shake, and they chase what withdraws its attention without anger, without drama, without begging for closure. When you stop explaining yourself, you create mystery. When you stop defending yourself, you create authority. When you stop reacting emotionally, you create psychological distance. And distance is where power grows the fastest. Most people crumble because they think everything deserves a response, a justification, or a desperate explanation to look understood. But what they fail to see is that every unnecessary reaction leaks energy, leaks self-respect, and leaks the aura of control that a powerful man must guard at all costs. Silence is not running away, it is rising above. It is choosing not to wrestle with pigs. It is refusing to fight battles that do not build empires. It is the discipline of a mind trained to prioritize purpose over ego, patience over pride, and legacy over temporary emotion. When you stop chasing anyone, love, attention, respect, you realign your life toward what actually matters, your mission, your inner stability, and your strategic advantage. And once your mind stops seeking validation, it becomes nearly impossible for anyone to shake your confidence or destroy your peace. You become harder to access, harder to read, harder to manipulate. Your presence becomes selective. Your attention becomes valuable. Your silence becomes a test most people fail. This is what makes you unbreakable. Your ability to hold yourself when the world expects you to collapse. Your willingness to walk away instead of explain, and your commitment to protecting your energy like a kingdom under siege. A powerful man knows this truth. What you don't respond to says more about you than anything you could ever say. Comment, "My silence controls the room." Number 4, the mind that cannot be broken. A man becomes truly unbreakable the moment he realizes that emotional control is not just a habit, it is a weapon, a psychological armor, and a declaration that nothing outside of him has the authority to decide how he feels, reacts, or moves. Machiavelli understood that the strongest rulers were not the ones who roared the loudest, but the ones whose minds were fortified against fear, insult, rejection, and manipulation. When your emotions stop responding automatically, you become a threat to anyone who tries to control you because their favorite tool, your reaction, no longer works. You must understand this clearly. People only have power over you when you hand them access to your emotional switches. When you stop explaining yourself, you take that access back. When you stop chasing, you remove their leverage. When you stop begging, you destroy their influence entirely. The man who does not beg becomes unpredictable. The man who does not chase becomes sovereign. The man who does not explain becomes intimidating without raising his voice. This is the psychology of presence, the aura of a person who does not need the world to agree with his choices because he knows exactly why he chose them. Most people crumble under pressure because they train their minds to depend on approval, attention, and emotional rescue from others. But when you train your mind to find stability within itself, chaos can hit you from 12 directions, and you will still stand. The storm may roar, but it cannot move a mountain, and that is what you must become, a mountain of discipline, certainty, and cold mental clarity. When the world tests you, do not respond immediately. Observe. When someone disrespects you, do not justify yourself. Withdraw your presence. When someone tries to provoke you, do not break your composure. Let the silence destroy them. Your power is not in how loudly you speak, but in how calmly you refuse to be shaken. You become unbreakable, not by avoiding difficult situations, but by mastering the internal voice that says, "No matter what happens, I stay in control." And once that voice becomes stronger than everything around you, no betrayal, no heartbreak, no disappointment, and no manipulation will ever collapse your spirit again. This is the mind that nothing can break, a mind that belongs only to you and obeys only you. Guard it, respect it, and build it every single day. Comment, "My mind bows to no one." Number 5, the edge of untouchable power. There is a level of inner strength so rare, so precise, and so quietly dangerous that most people will never reach it, and even fewer will understand it. It is the strength of a man who has mastered the art of emotional independence, who no longer reacts out of fear, insecurity, or desperation, but responds with calculation, intention, and a cold sense of direction. This is the man Machiavelli wrote about. The man whose mind is a fortress, whose silence is a strategy, and whose presence alone shifts the balance of every room he enters. When you stop chasing validation, you stop bleeding power. When you stop begging for clarity, you stop surrendering control. When you stop explaining your choices, you stop offering people a map to your weaknesses. A man who masters himself becomes untouchable because he removes the only vulnerability that truly matters: emotional dependence. People lose themselves because they tie their peace to outcomes they cannot control, to people who can leave, to opinions that change with the wind. But when your peace comes from within, you become immune to the storms that break ordinary men. No insult can shake you because your worth isn't up for negotiation. No betrayal can destroy you because you don't collapse when someone exits your life. You simply adjust and continue forward. No rejection can weaken you because your value does not decrease when someone fails to recognize it. This is how psychological power is born, through detachment, discipline, and the refusal to let anyone rent space inside your mind. You must become the man who chooses his battles with precision, who speaks only when necessary, who acts only when it serves his mission, and who walks away from anyone who tries to pull him into emotional chaos. Your silence will confuse them. Your withdrawal will expose them. Your lack of reaction will break the patterns they expected you to fall into. And that is the most potent form of dominance, not raising your voice but refusing to let others dictate the tone of your soul. The man who explains nothing becomes mysterious. The man who chases no one becomes respected. The man who begs for nothing becomes feared. This is the psychology of becoming untouchable. You separate your mind from the noise, you detach your feelings from outcomes, and you build a level of inner order that no external disorder can destroy. When life tests you, and it will, stand tall, breathe deeply, and remember that chaos loses its power the moment you stop giving it an emotional reaction. Let the world wonder what you're thinking. Let them guess what you'll do next. Let them feel the weight of your silence. You owe no explanations, no clarifications, no apologies for choosing yourself. This is your rise, your evolution, your awakening into the version of you that nothing and no one can break. Comment, my power comes from within. Number 6, the internal empire no one can invade. There is a point in a man's evolution where he no longer seeks to win battles outside of himself because he has discovered that every external fight is merely a reflection of the internal war he has already mastered. This is the stage where you stop being influenced, triggered, or derailed by anything that tries to pull you away from your center. Machiavelli understood this intimately. True power belongs to the man who governs his inner kingdom with absolute discipline, who does not allow fear, ego, or temporary emotion to overthrow his mental throne. When you decide to never beg, never chase, and never explain yourself again, you take back the crown you unknowingly handed to others. You reclaim authority over your peace, your focus, and your worth. Most men fall because they build their identity on unstable foundations, opinions, validation, attention, relationships, or outcomes they cannot fully control. But when you build your identity on inner order, on self-discipline, on a mind sharpened by silence and forged by solitude, you become a force that no chaos can weaken and no betrayal can break. You begin to understand that every emotional reaction is a doorway through which others enter and manipulate your mental space, so you start closing those doors one by one. You stop giving people the satisfaction of seeing you panic. You stop explaining your intentions to those who have already judged you. You stop chasing answers, closure, or reassurance from anyone who does not respect your presence. This is not coldness. This is elevation. This is the psychological transformation from being led by emotion to being guided by strategy. You become the man who can walk away without trembling, who can stay silent without guilt, who can detach without fear, because you have learned that survival is not about holding on. It is about letting go of anything that weakens your throne. When life pressures you, you don't fold. You become sharper. When people disappoint you, you don't collapse. You become wiser. When situations test your limits, you don't break. You expand beyond the boundaries of your former self. A truly unbreakable mind does not react to every attack. It chooses its battles carefully and waits for the perfect angle. You stop announcing your moves and begin moving with stealth. You stop seeking approval and begin operating from inner certainty. You stop justifying your decisions because you finally understand that those who deserve to know will never require an explanation, and those who demand one never deserved a seat in your life. Power is no longer something you chase, but something you embody. You become unpredictable, not because you try to be, but because you no longer operate from old emotional patterns that made you easy to read. Your silence becomes a test, your presence becomes a filter, your discipline becomes your identity. The world can try to shake you, but your mind stands firm like fortified stone. They can judge you, but their judgment cannot access your self-worth. They can walk away, but their absence cannot empty your purpose. This is the internal empire no one can invade. The mind that no insult can bend, no rejection can poison, no heartbreak can destroy. This is the version of you that makes people rethink how they approach you, that forces them to treat you with caution, that commands respect without demanding it. And the more your inner world strengthens, the less the outer world can distract you, touch you, or reduce you. Stand in this power, protect it like a sacred throne. Let nothing enter your mind that does not serve your mission, for the man who builds a kingdom within becomes undefeatable without. Comment, my mind is my fortress. Number 7. The man who owns his world. There is a rare type of man who no longer reacts to the world, but makes the world react to him. A man who no longer bends under pressure, but stands so firmly in his identity that even chaos begins to hesitate before approaching him. This man becomes untouchable, not because life becomes easier, but because he becomes harder to manipulate, harder to provoke, harder to shake from his center. Machiavelli wrote that power belongs to those who master perception, and perception begins with how you govern yourself when no one is watching. When you refuse to beg, refuse to chase, and refuse to explain yourself to anyone who has not earned the right to hear your truth, you create a psychological hierarchy where your inner authority sits at the top and every external force sits beneath it. Most men crumble because they place their emotional survival in the hands of people who can drop them at any moment. They chase acceptance because they fear abandonment. They explain themselves because they fear misunderstanding. They beg for validation because they fear being invisible. But once you stop fearing these things, once you cut the strings that others use to control your emotional state, you step into a version of yourself that becomes impossible to break. You are no longer addicted to being liked. You are no longer wounded by being judged. You are no longer threatened by being left out. You see these things for what they truly are. Attempts to influence your behavior, to weaken your resolve, to bait you into emotional reactions that drain your power. But you do not bite the hook anymore. You do not lean forward when someone pulls back. You do not collapse when someone withdraws their attention. Instead, you lean back deeper into your own throne, and your silence echoes louder than anything you could ever explain. People who once played with your emotions now feel a coldness they cannot interpret, a stillness they cannot predict, a sense of distance that disrupts their expectations. You transform from someone who is easy to read to someone who is impossible to decode. You become the man who doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard, who doesn't need to justify his decisions to feel secure, who doesn't need approval to move forward with purpose. Your boundaries sharpen, your patience grows, your expectations narrow. You start giving your time only to those who match your discipline, your energy, and your respect. Everyone else falls away naturally, not because you forced it, but because they cannot survive the environment of your new standards. Your emotions become tools instead of weaknesses. Your silence becomes strategy instead of avoidance. Your detachment becomes power instead of numbness. The game changes because you change. You no longer walk into rooms wondering how people see you. You walk in knowing that your presence sets the tone. You no longer chase love, you attract loyalty. You no longer explain your worth. You demonstrate it through your composure, your discipline, and your refusal to be controlled. And in this state, your mind becomes your greatest empire, unshaken, undefended, unpenetrable. The world can test you, but it cannot break you. People can misunderstand you, but they cannot diminish you. Challenges can delay you, but they cannot defeat you. Because you are no longer playing the emotional games that drain ordinary men. You have risen above them, and from this height, everything becomes clearer. Protect this mindset, nurture it, sharpen it. For the man who masters himself becomes the man who commands everything around him. Comment, I command my inner world. Number 8. The rise of the man no one can shake. There is a stage in a man's evolution where he becomes so internally solid, so mentally fortified, and so ruthlessly self-governed that nothing outside of him can pull him off balance. Not people, not emotions, not situations, not uncertainty, not betrayal, not even the storms that once shattered him. This stage is not reached through comfort. It is forged through pressure, through loss, through disappointment, through moments where you had to rebuild yourself with no applause, no witnesses, and no reassurance. When Machiavelli wrote about power, he wasn't speaking about mere influence. He was describing a mental architecture so strong that the world bends around it instead of breaking it. And that is where you are heading, into the mind of a man who no longer reacts to life, but directs it with unwavering presence and unshakable clarity. When you stop begging for understanding, when you stop chasing acknowledgement, when you stop explaining your every move to people who aren't even qualified to judge you, your life begins to shift in ways that others can't comprehend. You become lighter, clearer, sharper, quieter, more dangerous, not because you seek conflict, but because you don't flinch from it anymore. You stop leaking energy through pointless arguments. You stop letting emotions dictate your decisions. You stop giving people the power to influence your peace with their opinions, manipulations, or unpredictable behavior. Most people live in a state of inner instability. They're shaken by rejection, wounded by criticism, terrified of misunderstanding, desperate for validation. But the man you are becoming no longer ties his worth to anything external. Your worth becomes an internal law, not an external negotiation. You stop needing to be seen, and that's exactly when people start noticing you the most. You stop needing to be understood, and that's when your presence becomes unexplainable, yet impossible to ignore. You stop needing permission, and that's when your confidence becomes unquestionable. A man who does not need the world becomes the man the world respects, because he is free. You become immune to emotional baiting. You become untouchable to manipulative tactics. You become unreadable to those who once could play with your reactions. And your silence, your cold, controlled, strategic silence, becomes the strongest message you will ever send. People who once felt above you start feeling uneasy around you because you are no longer predictable. People who once relied on your emotional softness start realizing that the old version of you is gone. People who once expected you to break under pressure are now the ones who crumble under the weight of your composure. This kind of mental elevation doesn't shout, it doesn't brag, it doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is, and its presence alone shifts the dynamics of every room, every relationship, every conversation. You begin to understand the true nature of respect. It is earned not by force, but by consistency, not by dominance, but by self-mastery, not by loudness, but by the cold steadiness of a man who knows exactly who he is. You no longer chase connections. You allow alignment. You no longer tolerate disrespect. You remove access. You no longer over-explain. You let your boundaries speak for you. And the more you master this discipline, the more the world begins to treat you differently, not because it has changed, but because you have changed into someone whose energy demands higher treatment without asking for it. You become a man governed by reason instead of emotion, by strategy instead of impulse, by long-term purpose instead of short-term gratification. You learn that power is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself so completely that no one can use your emotions against you. This level of self-possession is rare, feared, respected, and admired all at the same time. The world cannot break a man who has removed the handles they once pulled. The world cannot destabilize a man whose balance comes from within. The world cannot weaken a man whose strength is not borrowed but built, tested, and hardened through silence and discipline. And once you arrive here, once you embody the man who cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked, cannot be emotionally hijacked, you become untouchable in a way that goes far beyond physical strength or social influence. You become untouchable because you have mastered the only battlefield that truly matters, your own mind. Comment, I am untouchable by design. Number 9. The man who moves without fear, without need, without permission. There comes a moment in a man's evolution when he stops living as a reaction to the world and begins living as a command to it. a moment where he no longer bends himself to fit into places that don't honor his worth, where he no longer allows the emotions of others to steer his direction, where he no longer asks for validation or understanding because he knows a king never asks, he decides. Machiavelli taught that the most powerful man is not the one who appears dangerous, but the one who appears unmovable and unaffected by emotional turbulence. This is the man who becomes untouchable not through force, but through mastery of his inner world, mastery of impulse, silence, and the psychological freedom that comes from needing nothing from anyone. When you stop begging for attention, you break manipulation. When you stop chasing after love, you break attachment. When you stop explaining your actions, you break every chain that once controlled you. Most men live in emotional bondage. They react to every slight, fear being misunderstood, panic when someone pulls away, and crumble under silence. But the man you are becoming leaves that fragile existence behind and steps into emotional sovereignty. You learn that fear cannot rule you because you no longer fear losing anyone who does not value your presence. You learn that confusion cannot break you because you don't need perfect clarity to trust your decisions. You learn that judgment cannot weaken you because you no longer define yourself by opinions that shift like weather. You learn that silence cannot intimidate you because you've learned to use it as a weapon, a filter, a mirror that exposes the intentions of others. You become the man who can sit with uncertainty, walk through chaos without losing composure, let people exit without begging them to stay, and remain centered even when the world demands you fall apart. This level of inner command terrifies people, not because you are cruel, but because you are free. Free from needing approval, free from the fear of being alone, free from the desperation to prove yourself. And that freedom gives you a psychological gravity so rare that people can feel it the moment you enter a room. They sense the steadiness in your posture, the authority in your silence, the certainty in your presence. You stop trying to impress anyone, and that's when people become impressed. You stop trying to fit into places, and that's when rooms adjust to you. You stop giving emotional discounts, and that's when people begin paying full respect. Power responds to those who no longer chase it. Respect responds to those who embody it. Peace responds to those who build it internally rather than search for it outside themselves. And the man who carries all three, power, respect, and peace, becomes a force that cannot be shaken. You do not fear loss because loss cannot break a man who does not lose himself. You do not fear rejection because rejection cannot wound a man who does not base his worth on being chosen. You do not fear endings because endings cannot stop a man who continually evolves. You are becoming that man now. The man who moves with calm intensity, speaks with intention, thinks with clarity, and acts with a quiet ruthlessness grounded in purpose. You are becoming the man who shapes his life through discipline rather than impulse, through direction rather than doubt, through self-mastery rather than insecurity. And once you rise to this level of inner control, nothing external can ever shake you again. Comment, I walk with unshakable authority. Number 10. The final ascension into unbreakable self-mastery. There comes a final stage in a man's transformation where he no longer measures himself by where he has been, who he has lost, what he has endured, or how many times he's been broken. Instead, he measures himself by the discipline he has built, the control he has claimed, and the power he has earned through mastering his inner world. This is the point where you stop living in reference to your past and start living in allegiance to your future. Machiavelli understood that the strongest rulers were not defined by their victories, but by their unshakable mindset, because a fortified mind does not collapse under pressure, does not crumble under betrayal, does not beg under loneliness, and does not chase under emotional hunger. This final stage is where emotional detachment becomes second nature, where silence becomes instinct, where clarity becomes automatic, where decisions come from a place of authority rather than fear. You stop explaining yourself because your choices no longer need approval. They simply need alignment. You stop justifying your boundaries because they are no longer negotiable. They are a reflection of the kingdom you are building within. You stop chasing people because you finally understand that anyone who is meant to walk with you will meet you at your level, or not at all. And in this elevation, you realize something most men never understand. It is not the world that must adjust for you. It is you who must build yourself in such a way that the world has no choice but to recalibrate around your presence. You become the man who can stand alone without feeling lonely, who can walk away without feeling guilty, who can remain silent without feeling weak, who can feel emotion without being ruled by it. This is the version of you that cannot be manipulated because your triggers have been dismantled, cannot be provoked because your reactions have been mastered, cannot be controlled because your mind is anchored in purpose instead of insecurity. And once you reach this state, people begin to treat you differently, not because you demanded it, but because your energy commands it. You become a man others think twice before disrespecting, a man they hesitate to lie to, a man they cannot confuse or destabilize, a man whose silence feels heavier than most people's shouting. Every step you take carries intention. Every boundary you set carries authority. Every decision you make carries consequence. You aren't just living. You are ruling yourself with the discipline of a king who understands that the greatest empire he will ever govern is the one inside his own skull. And from this mindset, you shape your world instead of being shaped by it. You rise above noise, above distraction, above emotional chaos. You become calm in situations that once overwhelmed you. You become strategic in moments that once confused you. You become centered in storms that once shattered you. And when people see this version of you, the version that no longer bends, breaks, or begs, they begin to recognize a truth you already know. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to become a force, a presence, a standard, a man whose inner world is so disciplined and so sovereign that nothing external can pull him out of his throne. This is your ascension. This is your power. This is your final evolution into the man nothing can break. Comment, I stand unbreakable.